Good day. Welcome to the Cory Morgan Show. We're getting towards the end of May. I see lots of you guys already in the comments scroll. Good to see. I love seeing it active. Yes, everybody's talking about the weather, especially when we're talking about weather patterns, climate change, disasters, and of course droughts. And that's what I'm going to talk a little more about in a bit. I'm a cheap man. I walk downtown to the studio from quite a ways away, so I don't have to pay for that excessive parking we have in Calgary. And I tell you, it was a wet, miserable walk to get here, but I saved a few bucks, so it was worth it to me. So yeah, be sure to use that comment scroll, guys, and chat with each other. It's good to see folks are out there. I see all of those comments. I don't necessarily read them all out, but it keeps the flow going and lets me know there are folks out there watching. For guests, I'm going to be talking to Darcy Gerow in a little while. He's an organizer of the Capitalism and Morality Conference. It's coming up this weekend in Calgary. We're going to do a little bit of political geekery. I want to talk about liberty, libertarianism, a little bit of poli-sci sort of stuff, but it's important, and I'm kind of wondering whatever did happen to classic liberalism. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in about 15 minutes. But first, let's circle back around to the weather and what's got me going. It's been interesting with people worked up with me on X, formerly Twitter, and people get mad at me on there all the time. That's hardly anything new, but this was more than usual. And over the weather, and over my daring to even speak about it. So I figure, well, then I better speak about it some more. So let's talk. Alberta, it's been in a drought for a couple of years, and it's been bad. I mean, last fall, the normally smooth-flowing creek that bounds my property out by Pritis had been reduced to a trickle. I've never seen anything like it. The reservoirs around the province, they were getting low, and last winter was relatively dry. And if things remain dry, the province could be facing another rough year for agricultural producers and with the forest fires. But things appear to be turning around. According to data, actually, from Environment and Natural Resources Canada, Alberta's precipitation has been above average since March. Let's look at the numbers. Cumulatively, from March 1st until the end of May in 2023, Alberta had 55.6 millimeters of precipitation over those 3 months. So that's not very much for spring. Now, this year, from March 1st until May 20th was when I took the last update from it, Alberta's had 145 millimeters of precipitation, and there were still 11 days left to go, and they're raining right now. So precipitation's on track to have tripled in the last 3 months versus last year. Now, when we were even talking about it back then, when the snow and rains began in March, the doomsayers were quick to warn us it's just a one-off, But when the precipitation continued into April, the climate hysterics point out this needs to be sustained, though, to moisturize the ground. It's not fixing anything. Well, as the rains kept falling into May, they're now howling. The reservoirs are still below average capacity. Is it ever enough? Will the climate alarmists ever be able to bring themselves to celebrate good weather? No, actually, they can't, because climate alarmists are cultists. They've wrapped their world around the perception that they're always living in a state of emergency, and they enjoy it. It makes them feel that they're special and they're living in singular times. It's no coincidence that climate alarmists tend to be the same ones who never wanted the COVID-19 state of emergency to end. I mean, you can still see them today. They're walking around with their masks or driving alone with them if they have a car. Politicians, they're on a different purpose. They still love using the climate alarmism to impose restrictive policies. Calgary Mayor Yoti Gondek declared a climate emergency as soon as she took office. She then proposed an insane $87 billion plan to deal with it for a city. Strangely, the cure for climate change is always some form of high-spending socialism. It's almost as if socialists are trying to use the perception of emergencies as a means to impose their ideology, since the democratic efforts to impose it aren't working fast enough. Now, last weekend I had to make a quick trip out to the mountains to take care of some business, and I couldn't help but notice how high the streams and rivers are right now. I was also happy to see there's still a lot of heavy snowpack remaining on top of the mountains. This means the melt that's going to be coming in June is going to continue to fill Alberta's reservoirs with the runoff all the way out to Saskatchewan. And I posted a picture of those mountains on X, and I celebrated what appeared to be weather patterns shifting away from a drought. It was just a positive and happy posting. Well, the response I got was swift and visceral. Climate alarmists were furious that I dared to question the state of emergency with mere anecdotal evidence. When I posted the data proving my assertions were based on more than just my observations on a drive, they howled that I'm not an expert or a scientist. It should be noted that the experts and scientists were predicting a hot, dry spring in Alberta, so they missed that mark rather dramatically. In reality, weather forecasters can't predict the weather very accurately beyond a couple of weeks. They can make broad long-term speculations, but as we can see this year, those tend not to be much more accurate than what you would get from shaking a magic 8-ball or asking a groundhog on February 2nd. Now, Canada might be in for years of drought, years of flooding, or years of moderate weather. I don't know, and I'll tell you what, the experts don't bloody well know either. And thanks to the massive size of the country, alarmists can cherry-pick the regions to try and make their case while ignoring weather predictions that were inaccurate in other areas. Alberta isn't poised to be needing severe water use restrictions, even though we were warned dramatically constantly of this for the last couple of months. And the spring wildfire season, it appears to have already come to an end. Soil's hydrated, and farmers could be in for some excellent crops this year. We should always plan for the worst, but we can't live in constant fear of it. So dismiss those morose, miserable climate zealots who want to bring us all down with their dire predictions. They're never going to be content. When we get good weather, we should enjoy it and celebrate it. I know I will, at least until I got to mow that ever-growing lawn I've got that's just sprouting up in this drought right now. All right, enough of my pissing and moaning. Let's get Dave Naylor in to see what's going on in the rest of the world of the news. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
It's going well, Cory. How are you?
Pretty good, actually.
Good, yeah. You seem in a good mood.
Yeah, not too bad.
I was actually out in Golden, not this weekend, but last weekend, and I couldn't believe the amount of snow up there in the mountains that's still got to come down.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, the heavy flow season is still coming. That's what fills the reservoirs and such, as long as it doesn't come too fast and burst the rivers. But again, it's beyond our control. But either way, we're not looking that dry.
No, I think Nico's got a photo, if he could bring up, of your compound out in Pritis. Mm-hmm. And that's the creek that runs through the edge of it. It's up there, isn't it? Are you and Jane got sandbags ready?
Well, thankfully, our house is a little bit up on the hill off to the right from where that picture is. So unless we're getting sort of Noah's Ark sort of water levels going on, we should be safe. But as you can see, that's Fish Creek, actually, out by Pritis. And it doesn't have very far before it comes to the top of those banks. Like, there's a lot of water on the move right now.
There certainly is. Leading off our side story is like a Ripley's Believe It or Not type story, where the federal government is going to pay $12 million to hunt a few hundred deer on a small BC island. This is a Parks Canada plan to eradicate the deer because they're eating all the native grasses. And in phase one of the operation, they flew in hunters from New Zealand, of all places, and they were up in helicopters shooting at them, and they failed miserably. Didn't get very many deer at all. In fact, the next couple of weeks, locals in the area went in and killed about 3 times as many. But now they're about to launch phase 2 of the operation, the ground operation. And they're going to be using hunting dogs and all that sort of stuff to kill all these deer. And the total cost is $12 million, according to documents obtained by the Canadian Federation of Taxpayers, or Canadian Taxpayers Federation, I'm sorry. I mean, what a country. I mean, all you'd have to do is open it up to the public and it would be, they'd be gone in a weekend, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who would actually spend good money for the privilege of going out to kill an animal. We have one right here in our office who talks about it quite often, actually. I mean, hey, to each their own. So how on earth are we spending money on something somebody would pay us to do? Only government could come up with that.
Yeah, it's only in Canada, I think, Cory. We've got tragic news coming out of Edmonton, which police have revealed a 15-year-old boy was slain in some sort of altercation in northwest Edmonton yesterday. Details are sketchy, but a man that the boy apparently knows has been taken into custody and set to appear in court, and an autopsy will take place on Friday. So stay tuned for more details. We've got a new poll out by Janet Brown showing the UCP basically maintaining their support that they had in the last election, despite bringing in a whole bunch of policies that the left wing has been screaming holy murder on. NDP is still nipping at their heels. We've got a column from our Anthony Crusher, who is wondering where the Liberals get their crazy economic ideas from. And you'll remember back in the halcyon days of sunny ways, Prime Minister said the budgets balance themselves. So I'm sure that'll all be mentioned in there. And an interesting story on the London drugs. You remember a couple of weeks ago they had to be shut down because they were hacked in a ransomware attack. Well, they've received a ransom note. They have to pay $25 million to this shadowy group, I think based in Russia, or their detailed prescription list will be revealed to the public. So Thursday deadline to pay that amount of money. And a judge has blocked the auction of Graceland. Some people or a group was trying to maybe sell it to foreclose on it, and the judges said, "Hang on a second." He was all shook up and put a hold on it. So the potential auctioners are now at the Heartbreak Hotel, Cory.
Oh boy, that one gave you all sorts of opportunities for your cheesy wordplay, but great work.
I have to give credit to the author of the story, Michael Thomas. So not all mine.
Well, you two work well together on it. Well, we'll see what more comes out of that one. Okay, well, thanks for the updates, Dave. Lots on the go. I'll let you get it back there and see if you can't find another gem full of puns to play with.
Oh, I think I got a few in my back pocket.
Right on.
Thanks, Cory.
That's our news editor, Dave Naylor. And yes, he's always a busy guy. As you can see, lots and lots of those stories out there breaking all the time. We put out more than pretty much any other publication these days, guys. This is a newsroom. You can see it in the background there. You can see it on the website. It's a busy spot. And the reason we have it rolling, the reason we have those reporters working that hard, keeping Dave running, is because you've been subscribing, and we really appreciate it. This is where I ask everybody to, I got to rattle the cup and remind you, this is how we pay the bills and stay out of the government dependency. Hey, it's $10 a month, $100 a year. For a full subscription, you get past that paywall, it helps support us. It gets you into all that news. We have the stories up and coming as they break, and it's well worth it. It's just an investment in your worldliness in keeping up with the news. So if you subscribed already, thank you very much. And if you haven't yet, come on, get on there and spread the word. Get more people on it. This is how we can maintain independence in media. I'll just talk a little bit before I get to my guest about one of the stories Dave was talking about, a little more background. And the whole story is on the Western Standard site, westernstandard.news. But this is pure government on so many levels. Now, the reason that these deer need to be shot, because I don't think we quite covered that bit, was they're invasive. They aren't natural. They're not a run-of-the-mill. They're not like mule deer and white-tailed deer that we would have. There's some other type that I imagine somebody brought in for their private hunting, and they're all stuck on an island over on the West Coast. So they're somewhat contained. They aren't spreading all through. Because, God, if they went all the way through BC, there's no way we'd be able to hunt them out. But even fish in a barrel or deer on an island, our government is incapable of dealing with these things. And this is the idiocy. It reminds me of public art. We see it in Calgary. We need more public art. We need more public art. All right, let's contract some German-sourced public art. Well, wait a minute. Are there not artists here? Oh, no, we got to get the foreign ones. Why are we bringing hunters from New Zealand to shoot deer on an island here? And here's some of the numbers of how good these hunters were. They used a helicopter. Yeah, they used a helicopter to shoot these little fellas, and they shot 84 of them. It came up to over 10,000 a head for the deer they shot. And it turns out that 18 of the 84 were the wrong kind of deer. So they shot the natural deer along with the invasive deer. Good work. That's fine effort on your part. And as we said earlier, we've got a country full of hunters. We've got grocery bills going through the roof. We've got people who would have paid to go out and shoot these deer off season, if indeed they really need to be shot. But leave it to government. And I'm sorry, why do we see these things happening? We know it. Somebody somewhere in the middle probably made some pretty good money getting that contract to certain people. I mean, this is getting more and more common. That tends to be the explanation that comes down to the bottom of some of these bizarre government contracts and things that go out to tender. It probably didn't go to tender. I bet it was sole sourced. But it's so ridiculous, yet so typical. And off to the races we go again. So I'll segue and I'm going to talk to my guest. When I want to talk about smaller government, the smaller government we get, probably the better chance that at least we could avoid some of these ripoffs and such. And that means, coming towards a libertarian point of view. I want to talk about classical liberalism because, I mean, if I were to categorize myself, I think of myself as a classical liberal. Unfortunately, contemporary liberal parties have sort of ruined the word, and the liberty part has been lost. So let's bring Darcy Gerow in and talk about some of these things. Hey, Darcy, how you doing?
Cory, it's good to see you. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I just wanted to get into some political talk. It's as I said, I think of myself as more of a libertarian, classical liberal. Uh, well, you don't hear about that these days. We're living in a polarized political world where it just seems to be talking about my team and that team, and people are kind of forgetting about the principles, perhaps, of what they might stand for in the first place. What do you think of that interpretation of things?
Oh, I think it's an exactly perfectly accurate interpretation. Highly polarized. Totally absent of the foundation of liberalism, classical liberalism, as you and I would call it. Where self-ownership, autonomy, and kind of the corresponding rights of property and self-defense are paramount. They are the foundation of the society.
Yeah, and I mean, I think both of the prime two parties we have up there used to embrace elements of personal liberty, and I think neither of them are really promoting them terribly much any longer. I mean, the liberals, or at least the left, hey, they were responsible for getting the government out of our bedrooms and allowing us to live our lives as adults and things such as that. But at the same time, they went and turned around and got more intrusive with just about everything else we do. And then the conservative side of it, they talked about smaller government and getting out of subsidies or high taxes. But now it's just a matter of degree. I mean, the conservatives won't even talk about getting rid of supply management. And that's about as non-liberty-minded a policy as you could ever imagine.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right. And I think where we have to look at this is, first of all, I think there's a lot of nostalgia for, Canada in the early days of Confederation as some sort of beacon of classical liberalism, which, isn't entirely evident in the British North America Act or anything like that. There's not a whole lot there saying that they were trying to build a, there's not a whole lot there saying that they were up to anything outside of imperialism, right? And then the other thing is to remember that historically, liberalism was a moral doctrine. I mean, it was influenced by the Stoics, right? And it was and what ends up happening when you take that sort of doctrine based on private property, based on self-ownership, and you implement it into a political narrative, it loses some of its weight, in that if the foundation is private property and self-ownership, you are naturally, and then when you hand over authority to tax and regulate, when you open that door to the state, you are naturally going to lose some of that self-ownership, autonomy, and rights of property instantly. So what you're left with is not true liberalism or libertarianism. What you're left with is a response to liberalism or true liberalism. And like you say, we end up with what we would consider modern or contemporary liberalism, which is basically socialism. It's an egalitarian response to true liberalism. And you end up with conservatism, which is a reactionary response to liberalism, but they only tend to react to whatever type of liberalism is directly in front of them. They tend, like 300 years ago, the conservatives were defending feudalism. Today, they're looking to still maintain that status quo, but I think they'd be happy if we rolled back the state to, Jean Chrétien's Liberal Party, right?
Well, yeah, and we seem to be in kind of on a steady progression to the left, but I think part of that's just due to the fact that whether it's a conservative government or a liberal government, they can't seem to help themselves in making the government bigger and bigger and bigger. And then by its very nature, it's going to become more intrusive, more controlling. It's going to need to be fed more. That means they have to take more. And if we struggle against it, they have to take our liberties so they can take more while they're at it. Now, but that's not going to change overnight. I like to think it's going to change eventually, and I don't want to, tell people to give up on politics. But how do we change it? How do we influence? I mean, we've had a libertarian party since the '70s, and it sits there and says all the right things, but it's just always kind of sits off, on the fringe. I ran for them and won an election, as a matter of fact. I mean, it's great on principle, but does it have an impact? And how can we impact then, whether it's the Conservatives or the Liberal, maybe to at least mitigate and bring a little more liberty into the governance that we have right now?
Sure. Well, it's not an easy task, and I will say I'm not very optimistic, but and I'm not entirely sure that I mean, I've been a member of the Libertarian Party. I've been the deputy leader of the Libertarian Party, and I'll say I'm not optimistic in that this is all a political solution. I mean, a lot of it is. We have to encourage people to actually learn these ideas and embrace these ideas. Once you have especially in a huge democracy like Canada, I mean, 51% of the people can always steal from the other 49% of the population in a country like Canada. And so we really need people to learn about these ideas and embrace the ideas of like sound economic theory, natural rights theory, the types of things that the classical liberal thinkers tried to entrench into policy, right? But it's not an easy task. But once people learn that, and once Canadians that's what they're demanding. That's what their politicians will deliver. I mean, I think we have to look at it in a way that, we're not expecting some politician to come in and save us. What we're expecting is for us to make those demands on them. I mean, we both know the Conservatives or the Liberals will bend because all they want is, they want to get elected. And if we put demands on them, it will happen. But it takes a huge swath of the population embracing these ideas.
Well, yeah, we have the population has been well programmed to say government should do this, government should do that whenever there's a problem, where their first recourse should be, what could we do? Fine, if you want to talk collectively, but even as an individual, what can I do to address this problem? Government should be the solution of last resort, not the first one. But that's some very deeply entrenched attitude that's really grown, and I think is growing among people right now. But I mean, government's really starting to fail. They're not managing to achieve any of the things they say they're going to do year after year after year as well. They set targets and they miss them all the time. Do you think it's possible that we could redirect people when they realize, you're asking the wrong group, or you're promoting the wrong tool to solve the problems you perceive to have?
Like I say, I don't want to say that it's impossible. I mean, I actually work hard to do that. But I'm still not optimistic. I mean, that's part of that's part of the reason we hold our seminar in Calgary, is to bring people in and talk about these ideas. That's part of the reason, why I am an advocate for liberty. I don't know how likely it is. And I mean, the other option is, this thing that is Canada will collapse under itself, under its own weight at some point, if that doesn't change. So, and you see it all over the place. You see, secession movements, gaining popularity. You see, huge political divisions. I mean, the political divides we're looking at today are not easily overcome, and that is really a sign of the end of something. I mean, we are closer to some sort of I don't even know what it might look like. I mean, but it is not a cohesive society. And so there are things you can advocate for, major radical decentralization, lower taxation, regionalism, those sorts of things, leaving people alone. And a lot of those ideas are, that those are kind of easy sells for people, because nobody wants somebody in, say the Conservatives get in next time, and you're going to have a bunch of left-wing cities that don't want to live under the the yoke of a conservative central government, and so it is a pretty easy sell, as long as you're advocating it consistently throughout different political administrations, but it still takes time.
Yeah, the consistency is hard, especially when people start wearing a partisan banner and then they look the other way when their team does something that intrudes on liberty, but scream bloody murder when the other team does it. I mean, you have more credibility if you're critical of both sides. I mean, one area of orthodoxy in Canada has been public health care. That's a massive one. It's a huge part of what we spend our taxes on. It's bloated. It's one of those areas, though, where everybody seems to agree government is responsible for it, but it's not working. I mean, you see people shift towards thinking about change once they get a personal kick in the butt. And I think we're starting to see that personal kick in the butt with healthcare, like people realizing maybe it's starting to drive home. Yes, you've got free healthcare as long as you can survive 6 months to get in to get it. And it's becoming, more common all over the place. I think maybe people are being more receptive to realize maybe we could start looking at options where I'm going to be a little bit responsible directly for my healthcare. And government will be maybe a part of it. But, we can start chipping away at that monopoly healthcare system. I mean, if we could slay that sacred cow, or at least, reduce it, I think we're really moving in the right direction on just about everything else.
Oh, I fully agree. And, I think there's a good opportunity there for, some, kind of the extreme left and the extreme right to make some inroads, because you have people on the left who are, not to not to put them down, but they're like granola eating type people who don't believe in pharmaceuticals and that sort of thing. And on the other far end of the right spectrum, you have people who are especially after COVID, very much the same, very leery of these pharmaceutical companies, and also kind of maintain that idea of freedom when it comes to their healthcare choices. And you're absolutely right that, presently, I mean, look at Calgary. I mean, emergency waiting times are 12, 14 hours every day. And ultimately, you can say that the government is responsible for healthcare, but if you show up there and you're waiting 12, 14 hours and you're in bad condition, ultimately you're the one who is responsible. Like, you have to do whatever it's going to take to save your life at that point, because there's a good chance you're not going to get the help that you need.
Well, yeah, and the dollars are flooding out already. I mean, people who leave the country for private care aren't necessarily rich. They're just desperate. I mean, if I was told that, hey, Cory, you need this heart surgery within a month or you're probably going to be dead, we'll schedule you in for 3 months from now. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to refinance my house and I'm going to go to Vietnam and get it done. I mean, it's a matter literally of life and death at that point. And people are starting to get faced with that decision. And we're getting to know others. I mean, it's just, it's always the other guy. But now when it comes to health, eventually it always becomes you at some point or another. So I'm just looking at, I guess, one of those cracks where we could have an opportunity to talk to people and say, look, we can do better for ourselves. This is one of the big areas where, some room for liberty could actually make your life better. And that's, I think, what helps to sell.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And again, that kind of plays into what I was saying before about these organizations, call it the Canadian government, but even, healthcare. I mean, the thing is collapsing under its own weight. It's a huge bureaucratic nightmare, and you can't get the service you need, and it is collapsing, and people are looking for other options. I mean, people are not only are they leaving the country for healthcare, they're looking at lots of alternative options, lots of like witch doctory type stuff, and black market options too. So, I mean, that's what happens when the state has a monopoly on these sorts of things.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's only so much we can cover in 15 minutes, but that'll lead me up to, before I let you go, we're going to, Saturday in Calgary, there's going to be an opportunity to have a whole day to listen to myself and you and a whole bunch of other liberty-minded people at a conference. Where could people go if they wanted to join the Capitalism and Morality conference there, Darcy?
Go to capitalismandmorality.com. We have lots of great guests. Cory, you'll be there. I'll be there. We got Jayant Bandari. We have Judge Brian Giesbright. We have, I can't even list them all. Brett Olin from Bow Valley Credit Union. And then, so that's the Calgary event, May 25th. You can also check out the Vancouver event. If anybody in Vancouver is watching, that you will go to jayantbandari.com, and another great lineup of speakers there. That takes place June 1st.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you for organizing.
And hold on, for the Calgary event, use promo code Darcy and get 20% off.
There we go. Use Darcy and get 20% off. But yeah, come on down, guys. I'd like to see you there, and I'll be rambling at you live for a little bit, along with a whole bunch of other deeper thinkers than I. It should be a good time for people into a bit of political geekery. So, yeah, well, thank you for organizing it, Darcy, and putting that together. I mean, we keep at it as negative as it seems to be and looking ahead. Still, you can't give up, and hopefully we'll find some solutions this Saturday.
Yes, thanks a lot for having me, Cory.
All right, thanks, Darcy, and I'll talk to you soon. So that is Darcy Gerow, and the conference is, yes, Capitalism and Morality. Just Google that. You'll find it quick enough, and it's coming up this Saturday. And we could talk, again, there's a number of us talking about different forms of liberty, how it's going to benefit you, because that's what it always ends up coming down to is what's in it for me. That's really what politics always are. It's kind of, as he was saying, the parties will react when enough of the voters start saying, hey, I'd like you to do this. It's funny. I just wanted to use the healthcare example when it comes to that, because it's just become so entrenched in the Canadians' minds that this is the best thing in Canada. It just doesn't seem to matter how bad the healthcare system is failing, how long the waits are getting, how expensive it is, how many times we can put it in people's face. Look, many other nations are doing much, much better than us. We should change ours. And people say, no, we got the best system in the world. No, we don't. No, we don't. Not even close, as a matter of fact. We got some fantastic professionals. We've got some good facilities, but we are far from having the best system in the world. So let's start examining different ones. And we're seeing it leak out. That's the thing. That's the thing with socialism. It always is. People escape. They get out. Whether it's professionals getting the heck out to find a better life for themselves, or ambitious people leaving all together, or it's people getting out to get better goods and services. When Soviet Russia was going on, they had to lock in their professionals because people tried to escape. You didn't see anybody, for example, getting on rafts from Miami and trying to get out to Havana, 30 years ago. No, it was the other way. People escape socialism. They come into these capitalist countries. But the people on the top of the food chain in these socialist countries, some are more equal than others, that they didn't get their treatment and goods and services where they were at. They would leave and go elsewhere to get it. I noticed Jordan, one of our commenters, saying enterprising people ought to set up private clinics in the U.S. border towns a short drive from Canada and cater to the Canadian healthcare refugees. They already are, actually. I think Great Falls, Montana has I think they have an MRI machine, and that's just south of Calgary a little way, so people can speed up with that. And there's lots of other things. I talked about a couple of years ago. Jane and I went down, we like to escape to Arizona for a bit, but we also went to, there's a town, Algodones, and it's just across from Yuma, just into Mexico. And other people, the nickname for that town is Molar City. It's just a small town just into Mexico, and it has something like 600 dentists there. And it also has optometrists, pharmacies, all sorts of things. It's the weirdest thing. You cross that border, you walk in, and the whole town, and well, of course, it's you got the guys, as opposed to Tijuana, where they're going to be trying to pull you into donkey shows and other such goodness. These are all guys trying to get you to the best dentist or the best optometrist. But you go into the dentist's office there, you book an appointment, you get in. For a procedure we were looking at, I think about $10,000 to get done up in Canada. We got it done for like $2,500 down there. And it was modern, it was safe, it was clean. And these are the professionals trained just as well as any up here. The dentists and doctors down there are fantastic. So it's happening. It's leaking outwards, and we can't stop it from doing so. So let's figure out how to adapt to it. I'm not saying we should just call the problem solved because people are escaping down there to get the work done. We should just try and figure out how to build the environment here so you don't feel like you have to escape here to go down there and get your medical procedures or dental procedures or anything done like that. But it's a competitive world market. And the other thing that people are forgetting when it comes to Canada's socialized system is we need the professionals here. We are short of doctors. We're short of nurses, nurse practitioners. We're short of respiratory therapists. We're short of every type of medical professional. But in our socialized environment, we don't offer enough of the incentives to keep and retain them because we have to compete with the other areas that are offering them a better deal. So how can we change that? Well, there's lots of ways. And I know I'm going to use the P word. Privatizing, and I'm not talking about privatizing the whole system. I don't care about the American system. I know somebody's going to comment really soon and say, oh, you want to Americanize it. No, I don't. Their system stinks too. But guess what? There are dozens and dozens and dozens of systems around the world. And most of them in developed countries are universal. Universal meaning you will not get turned away for lack of funds. You're covered. You're paid for. But almost every other system in the world and every system that's doing better than Canada, and there's many of those, have a larger element of private provision within them. You know, you can have a hospital. It's illegal to build a private hospital in Alberta, in Canada. It is. You know, I can't say if I won a bunch of lotteries, I want to spend all my millions and build Cory's hospital down the road, hire my own doctors, and do my own thing. Even if I wanted to work within the public system, I could not do that. It's kind of ridiculous. You know, speaking of liberty-wise, I mean, shouldn't I be able to build whatever the hell I want, hire whoever I want, let people choose whatever they want? I understand a degree of regulation. You don't want me to just stick a doctor in front of my name and I can start doing open heart surgery. It's probably going to fare poorly for everybody. But why can't a private person open a hospital and work within the public system? This monopoly mess. Part of it's unions. People are terrified of taking them on. Our system is so rigid. Like, imagine this, and I'm just throwing it out there. There's all sorts of models. I think France is sort of this way. You can, all through Europe, there's private hospitals, and they're mixed private, public all over the place. But imagine a hospital that was built by a private investor, but it's regulated. They say 70% of what you do in there has to be within the public system, and you'll be paid for the procedures and the patients based on this schedule. This is what you will make, and this is what you will do. The other 30%, though, all yours. Use your doctors, use your rooms, use your surgical theaters, do whatever you want, and charge whatever you think you can get away with. Suddenly you're getting people coming from other countries spending money to keep your doctors here and keep your hospital facilities open. Yes, that's kind of how it works. Impossible in Canada right now. And then people with the politics of envy, some rich guy is going to jump the line on me. Hey, I got news for you. The rich guy already is. The rich guy already is. Politics of envy. They're the worst, most self-destructive politics in the world. What, we got to pull everybody down to the same level of lower misery because you can't stand the thought that somebody else is getting a better service or something than you. Get over it. Get over it. There's always going to be somebody richer than you. Unless you're Elon Musk, there's still going to be somebody who's going to have a bigger house, drive a nicer car, sleep with better partners. Who knows what they're going to do? Get over it. Worry about yourself. Don't worry about the other guy. If the other guy's jumping the line and spending the money so that you can get through the line faster and you can get to that specialist that wouldn't even have been there in the first place, you're winning. You're winning. They're subsidizing you. So don't look at it as somebody taking advantage of you. They're subsidizing you. So they got in a little faster. So did you. That's what people have to realize. So we've really got to chip away at this mountain in Canada when it comes to healthcare, mountain of envy and misconception that we have a good system. It's not. It's not at all. And it's failing us. And I mean, I've seen those debates online. People, oh, it's those conservative premiers are screwing healthcare everywhere. Really? BC's been under the NDP for quite a while. Socialists. And guess what? BC's got some of the worst waiting lists in the country. In fact, BC sent cancer patients to Washington to get treatment. Yes, the socialist bastion of British Columbia couldn't keep up with their own cancer patients, so they sent them to private hospitals in the big, bad United States to get it done. And, you know, it brings me into something else. One of the dumbest things that shows just how stupid Canada's system is, and it is stupid. because we can't pay people for blood donations. We can't pay people for plasma donations. That's been a big thing for a long time. Oh, that would be unprincipled to pay somebody for that. They have to donate. Well, that's good. Now we're short of it. So what do they do because we're short of it? We can't have people just dying for lack of blood and plasma when surgery is getting done. Well, we buy it. Where do we buy it from? The United States. Yeah. And why has the United States got so much plasma, so much that they can afford to actually sell some to us as well as filling their own needs? Well, it's because they pay people to give the plasma in the first place. So do we in Canada. It's just that we don't allow ourselves to pay Canadians to donate the plasma. Is that stupid or what? Just get over the envy. Set up a system here. Pay a guy $50 to go down and spend the time to give a pint, and lo and behold, we will have it because we're paying anyway. But this is how absurd our system is, how rigid. Everybody loses. Well, except for the plasma vendors in the States, I guess. So get over it, guys. Think harder. And yes, as Jordan said as well, you know, the commenter, if people are going to go to private options, we might as well privatize it up here and keep the money here. Yes. Yes, we already have a two-tier system. Do you think an NHL player really has to wait for care? Guys, it's that ship has sailed. Either way, you know, it gets back to, again, liberty. I see, that's where I talk about classical liberalism too, though. I'm not one of the hardcore libertarians where I think it should be just wide open. I do believe in it. We have a role for a universal system. We have a role, you know, I just want limited government. I understand that we won't have no government. And, but we can do much, much better while still universally covering people and be much more responsive and do a better job with it. You know, somebody else who's been a classical liberal, I would say, and libertarian for a long time is Premier Danielle Smith in Alberta. And something interesting, you know, with her, how things change sometimes when they get in office. She seems to have one blind spot when it comes to Premier Smith, and that's with trains. She's just got that thing with trains. And I know I've ranted and raved about this before, but I'm going to rant a little more about it right now as well. And that is... She came back from a meeting in Alaska and was speaking about a train line going from Fort McMurray, so that's northeast Alberta for people outside of there, going up to Alaska. Now, there's interesting things. I think Alberta should be partnering a lot more with Alaska. We got more in common with Alaska than we do with the rest of the country. And we're talking about sending goods, you know, between Alberta and Alaska, predominantly in the oil and gas sector, energy, and a train line might work for that. Okay, I'm okay with that to this point, but this was talked about in 2020, and Donald Trump said, yeah, go for it. You know, I think it's a good idea. I'll approve it. And Premier, well, I don't know, we had Kenny at that time. They were receptive. But then the company that was promoting it, it basically ended up falling behind, went into Chapter 11 bankruptcy and racked up $212 million in debt. So that's what keeps happening with these train projects, these rail projects. They almost inevitably turn into boondoggles. This thing didn't even get to the planning point before the company that was pushing it went broke. The role the government has is, do you think you got a business case? Great. Maybe we'll help facilitate the construction of that. We'll help, you know, maybe with some of the land acquisition. We'll definitely move back a bit on the permits so you can get through easier. We'll help with the negotiations with people along the way of the right-of-way with this, but we're not going to put tax dollars into your business. What? You can't do it without the tax dollars? Well, then go to hell. We don't have time for you. We're not here to bail out an unviable business. If you can't do it without my tax dollars, then don't do it. It's as simple as that. Now, a lot of these things is where government has to get out of the bloody way. Some people talk about, well, the Trans Mountain Line, we needed the Liberals to build that. No, we didn't. We never needed the federal government to build that. All we needed was the federal government to get out of the bloody way. We had a private company that wanted to build that, and they really desperately wanted to build it. They were going to spend billions of dollars to build it, but Prime Minister Trudeau and his buddies in BC kept getting in the way, kept blocking it, kept hindering it, kept holding it up. So finally they said, fine, we're out. We're out. Kinder Morgan said, we're out. And Trudeau realized, wow, we've pushed it too far. This thing has to get built. And then the government stepped in to do it. And look what we've got. You know what, 8 years late and 30 billion over budget, but it's finally running. Either way, these train lines will be the same. We've got to stop it. as well. I'll finish up. This is an interesting one from the housing minister, Sean Fraser. He's whining. He's saying critics must not interfere in his plan to build 3.9 million homes. Yes, he's saying the critics are hurting things. I'm trying to solve the crisis and you guys are harming it. This is the Liberal government. They couldn't even get their own tree planting program to come within 10% of its goal. Do we really think they're going to build 3.9 million homes? They're incompetent. This is where we're talking about getting government in to do something. They're only going to make it worse. They're only going to do it worse. We showed how well they can hunt deer on an island. They couldn't shoot those goldfish in a bowl. Do we really think they're going to build 3.9 million homes? And you're going to blame the critics who are perhaps questioning that goal that you set that is so absurdly high? We have a housing crisis. We definitely do. And the solution to it is like the solution to so many of the other problems. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. The amount of permits and regulations and licenses and bureaucracy and BS to get from the point of starting to build a house to have somebody move into it is absurd on every level of government in Canada. So no, I don't want you morons to promise me 3.9 million houses. I just want you to get out of the way. The rest of us will take care of it. We can do it. We're smart. We're able. Just get out of the damn way. That gets back to that liberty idea, right? That's where I kind of land on things. But I know, as Darcy kind of said, maybe it's a dream. But I'll keep pushing that dream anyways. Okay, I've run out the time for today, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in on this wet week. Maybe it looks like it's still going to be wet next week too, but oh well, we can use it. We can use it. Looks like the drought might be ending. So be sure to check in again. The pipeline's going to be on a little later tonight. We'll discuss a few more of those issues and get onto the westernstandard.news. Guys, take out a subscription, check out those news stories. They're breaking all the time. So thank you all for tuning in and listening to me vent my spleen at you today. Tune in next week at this time. We'll do it all again with a whole new fresh set of issues for me to go on about.